do we ride to Jerusalem? When 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 do we? It says repeat many times. I'm doing it. Ride to Jerusalem. When do we?
Why should you want to know? Why are you obsessed with fighting? Times and fates you can't defy. If you knew the path we're riding, you'd understand it less than I.
What's up, Buzz? Tell me what's happening. All right. Welcome. We're here.
Is this a Metaverse podcast or a Jesus podcast?
Not yet. Jesus Christ, man. This is the infrequently updated podcast you probably thought was dead. Called Science or whatever is the name, sir. And it's now officially the new premise is, because we only had one episode, and here's the thing about one episode of a podcast, it's one data point. And if you're familiar with the difference between a point and a line, there's no pattern yet. So anything we do now is valid, fuckers. So it is with a total sense of internal integrity and consistency that I say, this is Science or whatever. The show where we talk about whatever science-related thing Griffin wants to talk about. So last time we talked about Newton in quarantine, and this time, what are we talking about? My co-host, who's with me as always, Griffin Rowell.
Oh, okay, yeah. So the Metaverse.
Metaverse.
And I just want to point out that we have been planning this from before Mark Zuckerberg ruined the Metaverse. So
that's true.
Yeah,
that's very worth pointing out.
This wasn't just like some cash grab that we came up with in the last 2 weeks, but
we are squatting on the domain name Meta, and he can add us about that. Honestly, there was some pushback. Abe and I had to dither and dilly-dally about this because I don't understand the metaverse enough to know why it's important, but that actually made it, we realized, a perfect topic for this show. And Griffin felt that it was such a vast and vital topic that it would take multiple episodes to cover. So buckle in. This is part one of an episode of a series on the metaverse. So Griffin, first and foremost, I'm sorry, I forgot to say. We analyze science topics in two segments on this show. The first segment, of course, is a chronological a cappella duet redoing of Jesus Christ Superstar.
Every episode.
The second portion is the meat of the show. Yeah, which is what we're getting into now. So we're into the meat of the show. Griffin, what gives you the right to talk about the metaverse? I like to ask. Why you? Because you don't appear on any of our other podcasts, just the science one. So for people who are just joining us, why are you here to talk about the metaverse?
Well, I mean, I think rampant, is it I guess it's cronyism, although I consider you a family member, but that's the reason why you've given me inordinate power to just come up with whatever topics I want. But as we now know, this is going to be a hugely important topic for the future of technology, and I'm personally a kind of, I guess, warlike ape, and I see this as the next great maybe battle for humanity and our identities, and we'll go into all the different facets of that over the next 4 episodes I think we have planned right now. I quit my normal day job in June, and I have basically just thrown myself into this world, and I want to be humble about that and say that I'm still very new to it in both the crypto space and also the metaverse space. It will go into a lot of this, but it already has a very rich history, and I'm still learning. So why am I the person here? It's because I know you, and I'm doing my due diligence, but I want to, over the next episodes, I want to also direct people towards the people who've been building this for years in the past already.
Well, did you see The Big Short?
Yeah.
The Christian Bale character, I think of you as like, of this, as the Christian Bale, at the end of that movie, they're like, the Christian Bale character predicted it all. He says water now. And I'm like, oh, snap. I guess water is the thing. And in my life, you're a person very much like that, who you've often taken big swings and they've usually connected. And you've just achieved so many things that I take heed when you say, I'm revolving my life around this now. So you started by saying, we know that meta is the future. And you ended by saying crypto something.
Whoa.
I'm here to represent the people who don't know. You're over assuming when you say we know. So I think we got to start with.
Yeah, no, that's the first
Daddy,
topic.
what is the metaverse? And
well, first of all,
what does it have to do with crypto?
You've committed a grave sin by saying but that meta is the future, and meta is the shortening of metaverse that Facebook has co-opted as meaning the metaverse.
The metaverse is the future, and is it just a persistent shared virtual social hangout environment? Am I right about that? I feel out of touch.
Well, let's go through it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are a lot of news articles kind of going over this first little bit here, but let's rehash it for people who haven't heard it. So really, I start the story with William Gibson in the Neuromancer novel. He coined the term cyberspace, actually. I guess actually before Neuromancer, there was a story called Burning Chrome, but he defines cyberspace.
Have you read it, by the way?
Which, Neuromancer? I've never read
I just read Neuromancer.
Oh, yeah, pretty Neuromancer. Bad. You said it's pretty bad?
Pretty bad.
Oh my God, it's like homework. Cheesy. It's like dense, overly jargony sci-fi.
Well,
yeah.
And the adventure part still has some holdovers from the like Flash Gordon sort of. It's very melodramatic.
Agreed.
It did invent the idea of cyberspace, so good.
Yeah, visionary, not super fun to read for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a really good quote in there that cyberspace is. Oh, it's also the grandfather of cyberpunk too. So I love cyberpunk. So that's
we wouldn't have Snow Crash without it, and Snow Crash is maybe my favorite book behind Sirens of Titan. So yeah.
Okay, well, don't get ahead of yourself there, bud.
All right.
So cyberspace, the definition of this is a consensual hallucination experienced daily by billions of legitimate operators in every nation, a graphic representation of data abstracted from banks of every computer in the human system. So that was a quote from Neuromancer, and that's pretty much what we're building on when we talk about cyberspace and the metaverse in general. But Neuromancer was pretty bad about fleshing out any details. It's more like a Tron kind of thing where he's kind of like going up against pyramids of AI and whatnot. So Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson is where the metaverse begins. And 1992? I should have written that down. I think it was 92.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't consult your notes because I haven't had time. So this is fully organic. But yeah, Snow Crash. I've said this before and I'll say it now. It's so good. Highly recommended read. Not dense. Incredibly engaging and thought-provoking.
So
super good.
Let me push back on you then. You said you represent people who don't know about the metaverse.
People love Snow Crash. It's about a pizza delivery boy. Futurama and Snow Crash, baby.
It's literally about the metaverse. It coined the term metaverse.
Oh, well, I didn't know. So here's the thing, though. There's parts of Act 3 of Snow Crash that I don't understand because there's a lot of philosophy that gets very
the Sumerian
meta
stuff? So good.
Yeah, the Sumerian cuneiform shit.
It's
a great book.
I love it.
But I don't fully understand what they're saying about the Nam Shub and all that stuff. So I just kind of went along for the ride with Snow Crash, and it is a hell of a ride, and I want one of those robot dogs. If you don't know what we're talking about, you should read it. The hero's name is Hero Protagonist.
Which is knowingly stupid. He named himself that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. The other main character is yours truly, so he's in good company. But so this is the thing this is why we do this, and these are the connections I'm hoping to make. Is that it? I do understand it. Cyberspace is the metaverse because when I put on my Oculus Rift, I go to a home space that I can use my social apps on. Is that it? Is that what we're talking about here?
For someone who didn't consult any notes, you're actually playing right into my narrative pretty
Oh,
well.
great. Good.
So actually, I want to just like get a little bit nerdy by naming some names when I'm going through this.
Sure.
And there's an essay by this venture capitalist named Matthew Ball. It's called "The Metaverse: What It Is, Where to Find It, and Who Will Build It." And it's about a year old at this point. And he goes through, I mean, there are many different iterations of what the metaverse is. And in fact, there is no consensus about what it will be when it's done, I guess. I don't know if it'll ever be done. But this one lays out 7 rules. And so we can kind of go through them. I think it'll be good to go through the different aspects, and it'll probably explain things. So,
okay.
So rule 1 is that unlike the home spaces and things like that we have right now, the metaverse is persistent. And that means that, when you play a game, there's a server that resets. It can crash. People can manipulate it to do different things. They can change the rules. And the metaverse is supposed to be an actual parallel world that is running at the same time as the real world. And kind of a little take on the old koan that I like is that, if a metaversal tree falls in the woods, even if nobody's there to watch it, it will fall. Like it will have a persistent
the
natural
chips will
environment.
Process the sound waveforms because they have to.
Yeah. And we're going to get into this more in future episodes, but think about the implications of that for the way that networking happens today, like on a centralized AWS, Amazon server, or a data center that Blizzard runs for World of Warcraft or something like that. And try to figure out how that will happen. The answer is nobody knows right now, but there are technological trends emerging that...
Is it a valid question to ask where we would get the energy for that? Or am I dumb?
I think it is
I think
valid.
You're dumb.
No, I think it is valid because, well, we're going to get into how these technologies work, but a lot of them use mechanisms of consensus between nodes in a network, and that takes a huge amount of energy, and just data processing in general takes a huge amount of energy. So it may not be how would it be possible to process that or to use that much energy, or where to get it, but how to do that safely and sustainably is probably a very good question, and one that I'm not super well versed in the answer to.
But let's say we finally decide globally to harness the limitless power of the sun in an efficient way, and inventions and breakthroughs are made that allow us to do that even more conducively. And that's not an issue. So what is it, a giant server farm that's always on? And nothing never crashes, right? So is the idea that if it crashes, everyone's inconvenienced while they repair it, but then the world is on again?
So that's because you're assuming that something is running the metaverse, and I would posit that is not how it will work. But let's save that. Let's save that for another time.
Okay.
I kind of got ahead of myself too in that conversation. That rule 2 is that it's persistent. It won't reset or end, and it's synchronous and live. Okay, so all of the players in the metaverse are in a living experience, and each person will experience it equally. And that's not to say there aren't rules in the metaverse. Like if I go shopping in the metaverse, hopefully if if like Amazon has a metaverse store,
you're saying there will still be economic inequality in the metaverse. Oh, thank God.
Well, that's a good topic. But what I actually was getting at is that I won't see every person in Amazon at the same time. You know what I mean? Like how many millions of people are on Amazon?
There might be rules of physics in the metaverse. Everyone gets same sensory inputs from the thing, right?
Right.
We all understand what we're meaning. The delusion is shared.
Right. It's a shared delusion. And, there may be restrictions, right? So if you go to a concert in the metaverse, a ticket is required to enter the building. And just like real life, you stand outside and you can listen to the music and potentially see lights and things like that. Those networking protocols are super complicated, and I don't think that we are close to there yet. Because usually the way things work is if you enter a space, you'll go to some other part of a server or something, and based on how many people are there,
the infamous load
and what's
screen
happening. It's really difficult to have that kind of continuity. But the next thing is that unlike the Amazon example where you don't see other people there, in a public square, there's no cap to concurrent users. So just like the real world, I could jam a whole bunch of people into Times Square for New Year's Eve. In the metaverse, you could have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people all in one spot. And the way that works right now is there are shards of a server. So really on something like Fortnite, there was like the Marshmallow concert. It had, I think it was like 11 million people or maybe more than that even. And so it kind of looks like the metaverse.
So can people therefore occupy, like your avatars can occupy the same point in space at the same time? That's acceptable physics in the metaverse? Is that what you're saying?
It could be, but it
depends on the laws as they're set up.
I would guess that there would be collision protocols for the avatars, and so you would actually only be able to jam as many people as the space allowed. But
I think in Snow Crash, he uses a clipping error to get in somewhere at some point.
Right. There's no reason why you would have to have collision, right? Like if you're in a concert, maybe you only want to allow as many people as fit because it makes you more in demand.
Or maybe everyone turns invisible when they enter the concert floor, so you can just see the band or whatever.
Just like Snow Crash, right? Where you're like you're translucent or whatever until you open the black sun, and then you're a real person. But the idea is like this is an actual concurrent use, not a trick of networking, not people existing on different servers that kind of look like they're in the metaverse, but you're actually disconnected because of some abstraction layer that you can't really see or understand. And that's a huge problem. It is not solved by any means yet. That will be one of
But it's another facet of everyone accesses the same metaverse. Yes. It's kind of similar to Rule 2.
Which this actually, I don't know if this is a rule on his... it's kind of implied by this, but I'll just take a break here and say there is only one metaverse. It is the metaverse. Okay? And that's important because all of the giant tech companies, including NVIDIA, which I love, talk about their metaverse a lot of time. Like they have the Omniverse, and there's a lot of language that makes it feel like one of these companies will be building the metaverse. And just take a minute to think about the arrogance of that and the hubris of it, and really internalize what that would mean.
Well, you're saying because it's like saying the universe, because the universe by its nature is all encompassing. So the metaverse encompasses all those, right? Even if it's like how we call it the internet. We don't say we don't cordon it off. It's like we say television, we say film, we say internet. You're arguing the metaverse is like a medium or a thing that transcends being owned by a single company, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say that if someone was successful in building the metaverse that everyone used and they controlled
The
it that way,
90% of users use to access the metaverse, let's put it that way. Yeah.
then that person is akin to a creator god, like a capital G creator god. And that seems
well to humanity, not to any other life forms that may be out in the real universe.
Oh, you don't think over time that other life forms would emerge into this metaverse?
Well, you mean, are you talking about AI consciousnesses?
I mean, if we're taking this to its conclusion,
this is getting crazy.
But anyways, that's far off and kind of outside the scope of the metaverse conversation
well,
we're having.
We're only 3 rules through, so let's keep going.
Yeah. So the rule 4, functioning economy. Okay, so it's not just.
Why does that have to be? Why does there have to be an economy? Screw you, dude.
Well, so an economy can have a lot of different mechanisms to it. It could be a communist economy if you want. Market economy.
So suddenly I'm a communist just because I said screw you about. All right, I see.
I didn't. If the hammer and sickle fit, I guess. But
whoa,
hot take.
That is not the accusation you think it is in 2021. But okay, there's an economy. There's a functioning way that resources are. Why would resources be limited, however, is my question.
So that is...
like, it's not like a game. Why do we need to have... wouldn't it be a post-scarcity society, the metaverse?
It could... So, I don't know. I think that human psychology will dictate how that works. And right now, the understanding of human psychology is that people need incentives of different types to want to function within a system. And we're going to talk about crypto.
But what system acculturated us all and taught us to think that we can't exist without it? The capitalist system.
No, well, but what about everything before capitalism? I would say what biology gave rise to the systems that exist. If you go
right, but I never take biology. Right, then we shouldn't live in houses. We should, you know what I mean? Or we should always do what biology, like, I think it's interesting when people go, well, I'm doing this diet because it's what caveman ate. It's like, okay, well, then we should be caving each other's heads in with rocks and shitting in the wherever we are, No, we do. We transcend our biological functions. We're doing it now. I'm talking to you with language that we invented. So I feel like by that same token, we have the chance to rebuild the universe from scratch with new laws of physics. And we're going to say, well, we don't want to get bored or too full of malaise. So there has to be an arbitrary system of scarcity so that people will do stuff. That burns me up. That grinds my gears.
Well, let me ask you a question. You said we're building a new universe from scratch. Mm-hmm. Why would we introduce artificial scarcity? Let me ask you, who's building it?
Yeah, well, hopefully someone benevolent, but probably not.
No. I'm not talking about who, like, as an entity
owns it or gets the money in the real world.
I'm talking about who is literally making the 3D models for this thing. Who's coding all of the different functions of the metaverse.
There are games like Spore, and Spore's the big one. No Man's Sky is the other one, which is an ingenious system. They're procedurally generated by the computer and randomized and based on certain algorithmic rules. And there's also a character and terrain creator or whatever in the game, and anything anyone's ever created is added to the cloud's overall database and becomes building blocks for more and more complex. So, like, it could be created by the players the longer they play it, if that makes sense.
And what is the incentive for playing those games?
Oh, well, the same reason I play video games now, which is like it is stimulating and engaging to the senses. If there's I mean, well, there wouldn't be a story component, so I couldn't feel that my life had been enriched in that way. But I would still say it engages the senses and it's a reward in itself to be creative. Dude, we were just talking about how I've worked for, no matter what my day job has been, I've worked for 15 years on this dream of wanting to make movies or write video games or in some way tell stories to the public. I have no financial incentive to do that. It is because I enjoy it in and of itself. Like if it was the financial incentive, I would just do media analysis, pop culture analysis, because I'm already established in that. Like, what was your incentive for your stint in the Buddhist monastery, Mr. Smart Guy?
Oh, well, that's, I mean, so I think we're both talking about self-actualization.
Were you trying to corner the market on bitter melon, my friend?
No. I think it's an interesting point, but I think it's also, I mean, I'm sorry to say, I think it's very arrogant and elitist just to actually make that point in a lot of ways. To say that self-actualization is something that you can force someone to use is, I think, a losing proposition.
No, it's optional. I'm saying, why can't the people who aren't self-motivated can happily do nothing? Isn't that the point of a post-scarcity society? Is you could be the Wally fat person in the hover chair if you want, or you could be Captain Janeway if you want. It's a post-scarcity society. That's the point. Do whatever you want or don't do anything. We don't care. There's plenty of everything to go around, so it's no skin off my ass.
But see, it isn't post-scarcity because none of it exists. Someone has to build this stuff.
That's different.
That's true. And I think that
you're right. That's what we're actually talking about. That's
right.
true.
And so like if you do like a Maslow's hierarchy of the metaverse, right? People are going to have to feel safe in the metaverse. They're going to have to feel like their needs, like their basic needs. But it's
complicated by the real pyramid. Like they still have to eat when they log off.
Exactly.
And shit like that. Yeah.
So they'll never be able to get rid of that.
Me.
And then if you look at, we'll talk about NFTs and stuff, but if you look at the status, social signaling of scarce objects and things like that we can't really do prior to the NFT technologies because you couldn't really own something of scarce nature. That's an important part of human psychology too. Self-actualization is the end goal of all of this, I think. And I think post-scarcity is an end goal, and it's one that can't be in the metaverse alone, right? It's not the only thing. We have to get...
I do agree it's privilege and that we need more focus, certainly at the phase of existence we're in, at the bottom of the pyramid. But I do think it's also a fair point that the point of the Maslow's hierarchical pyramid is to get as many people as possible to have the safety and security that they can do things like pursue the frivolous shit at the top of the pyramid, like spirituality, art, and self-actualization. That's absolutely the goal of the pyramid.
Absolutely. And I think, I don't want to say everyone who's interested in this wants that, but I think even the people I disagree with would say that they want that all the same.
More safety and security and food when you need it, etc.
And so what that means, because we're not all there yet, is that you need a functioning economy to incentivize people to do things like build and create for this world and interact in it.
All right, so I've accepted the fourth rule. This feels like AA. Each rule.
It's only 7 though. It's only 7. We don't have too many.
That's
more.
True.
So let's do a rule 5. Man, that last one got deep. Rule 5 is that the metaverse spans across all networks. So it'll be a nexus of the physical and digital worlds. Meaning that it's not just what you buy or do in the metaverse will stay in the metaverse, but there's definitely opportunities to buy and do and interact in the metaverse that have real world impacts.
Right. Business deal transactions, 3D printing stuff you bought in the metaverse.
Yeah.
Plenty of ways that could happen. I see.
Yeah. Definitely a less controversial
e-commerce
than the economy one. I see.
Yeah.
Rule 6, and this is actually One, this is, I think, one of the most important in the world that we're in right now, is that there will be unprecedented interoperability. And especially in our digital worlds right now, that is simply not the case, right? For the most part, World of Warcraft property stays in World of Warcraft. I think Roblox is a little bit better than most, but that's an exception. Every digital platform has its own stuff, and you basically are beholden to that stuff if you want to use that platform.
It exists
right?
on their servers that they own. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm sure there will be maybe a battle around this, but it might just be that the value proposition of interoperability is so great that no one can really stand in its way. But we have a lot of open standards that we can start to develop for things like 3D models and avatars that should be portable across these worlds within the metaverse, right? So if you're on my platform, you look one way. That is the way that you see yourself in your virtual.
The metaverse only works if it's all cross-platform,
right?
Cross-play
Otherwise,
to
it's
the
not.
extreme degree. Right, for sure. That's self-evident as well.
Yes. Well, it should be. I don't know if that will be the direction.
Oh, right. Or at least it may ultimately be that, but there might be a long phase where it's not that, or it struggles to find that, or yeah.
Well, I think the whole point of me wanting to do this is that this is a call to action, that we need to be very active in determining what we want this to look like. Otherwise, it will look the way the last 20 years have, and a few giant players who will become immensely powerful due to this will control the narrative, which I've already seen in the past couple weeks, and the way that this looks. So,
it's happened to the internet. We're already post that process with the internet.
And so we have the chance right now to do this over again, and we should take advantage of that chance. So there's going to be a big test when platforms start to talk about the way they want to do things. I think I saw an article this morning that was NVIDIA talking about USD being the file extension for creating content, 3D content for the metaverse. And USD is a great file format, right? Like Pixar made it. It's pretty widely used. But for news media to be saying this kind of, declaring it, and parroting what these giant companies are saying, I think is a kind of a dangerous precedent that we're setting at this point.
Right.
So that's my soapbox on that one. Rule 7 is that it is populated by content and experiences. So you're talking about, like, is it just a social gathering, or is it commerce, or is it what? And I think we're already seeing that it's all of these things. It's basically anything you can imagine in your head, you can make it. You know, the real world is constrained to some activities, but there's no physics constraints in the metaverse. So
yeah, but okay. So then the big question to bring us back down to earth is, like, in life, like, can I eat a taco in the metaverse? Is there a tube connected to my mouth? Is there haptic feedback all over my body? Do I feel things in the metaverse? What are we talking about as far as the hardware rig? Or is it injected into my brain and is it a sensory hallucination?
I think,
or are we just talking about my VR goggles, but more complex?
No, and VR is actually an interesting topic because
it hurts people's eyes and makes their tummies hurt right now.
I think I actually like AR a little bit better personally, because I want to be able to interact with the real world while out in the metaverse at the same time. I also think it gives you.
Oh, so this isn't determined yet.
It's not determined the way this looks, and I mean haptic feedback. In this, I think Facebook is doing, or Meta, or whatever it's called now, is doing a lot of research on haptic feedback. And I mean, you could foresee a future where you have a haptic feedback suit, and you have something connected to, you have a tube that sprays chemicals in your mouth and you taste tacos, whatever.
But that is a whole, that's what I mean is I wonder what degree, or if multiple products will exist and it'll exist as a range of degrees. But if it's a pod or you have to plug your skull into it, then it's a whole thing. It's interesting to think about the version where it's in your glasses, or you can somehow just wear gloves and glasses and you're in it while you're in your house walking around or whatever.
I would say, personally, I would be very hesitant to go the full neuromancer matrix.
We have a plug in the back of our head. Yeah, that's highly unlikely for humans to want to do that.
I mean, we can't even get people to like take medicine.
Get vaccinated,
so. Yeah. I want Mark Zuckerberg connected directly to my actual brain hardware. That sounds good. Let's do that. Don't take that. Don't cut that out of context. Let's not do that. That sounds terrible. So that all this stuff is going to be done by different types of organizations. I just want to take 1 second here to like add a little something. It'll be giant companies like Meta will definitely be part of this. Individual creators are going to be much more empowered to make experiences. The Small Beans Metaverse, I'm sure will happen. And then there are these things called decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs. And this is basically the next generation of, you can call it a corporate structure, but it's much more egalitarian, and it's basically an organization without a head. Everyone has a say to vote, and it's like an open source community with a common goal in mind. And a lot of them have their own cryptocurrencies and things that are used to incentivize action, and some of them control very large war chest treasuries as well. So that's another thing that's part of this metaverse conversation that will become increasingly important over the next number of years, is people transitioning to this way of organizing. Maybe a little less fun than other stuff, but keep an eye on it. It'll be good. So we've talked a little bit, but how is all this stuff going to happen? Like we're all used to video games. We're all used to Blizzard owning our stuff. And the concept of NFTs is what makes this possible in a lot of ways. And some people are going to have, even within the metaverse community, I think people have some hesitancy about cryptocurrency and NFTs because there is a small minority that controls a lot of power within these groups. But it doesn't change the fact that a digital item can now be proven to have come from some place. So up until now,
she's saying that's regardless of whether it's used for money laundering by criminals or whatever. It's still a new technology that provides a function we didn't have before.
Right. And yes, people do all sorts of nefarious things with cryptocurrency.
Crypto, yes.
But the underlying principles of provenance, of being able to tell where something comes from, and ownership. You talked about things resetting and being controlled in some way, right?
If it's housed in a server farm, like if it exists somewhere physically as data on a circuit board, if that circuit board gets struck by lightning, what happens to the metaverse? Is the metaverse, or is one of the rules the metaverse must be perfect and uninterruptible, or it's not the metaverse,
Well, I mean, that was the first rule.
Right, but that's what you hope, but that's not how real world will go.
Well, okay. So there are a lot of technology barriers there, but you could argue, just as you're talking about tasting tacos in the metaverse, that these blockchain technologies, basically distributed internet technologies, will make it so that there are so many nodes that like the Earth would have to be destroyed by an asteroid. All electricity would have to go out for it to cease to exist. And even then, I don't know if the blockchain would cease to exist if all those nodes went out, or if there would be a way to recover it. I haven't looked into that. But yeah, what I'm saying is that these NFTs and the ownership that goes along with them basically becomes a common good, right?
It would be so funny to me if by sheer random chance, this is impossible, but everyone who is a node on the blockchain shut their computer off at the same time for a microsecond, and it disappeared and it was unrecoverable. That would be hilarious to me. But I doubt that that's possible technologically.
No, it's not possible to coordinate. So that's the entire point of the blockchain
it can't be. Yeah.
Well, it could technically happen, but the amount of coordination and collusion that would have to occur is so infinitesimally small
that it's as secure as we can make anything, essentially.
Right. Yeah. And so that's the whole premise of Bitcoin, basically, is you distribute it enough so that no bad actor can really control the outcome of the system. And so just a quick note about NFTs, because they've become kind of a huge meme at this point. And a lot of them may seem silly because they're just JPEGs basically most of the time. But the underlying technology that is emerging around this stuff is going to have profound effects on digital ownership. And I mean, that will be everything from items within the metaverse to mortgages and housing deeds. It's not far-fetched to say that anything that ascribes ownership and a transfer of ownership wouldn't be tokenized at some point. It ain't
just lazily drawn cartoons, a lion smoking cigars.
Yeah, and also that.
Okay. Well, that is mostly what I see, is just monkeys and lions smoking cigars.
And so it is very easy
on a
to
stamp-sized
dismiss.
image. Yeah.
But a lot of the projects that have become famous, like CryptoPunks and
is that the stupid 8-bit one?
No, yeah, CryptoPunks is the 8-bit one.
Okay,
CryptoKitties, Bored Apes, all these things.
Do you agree with the assessment of many that that aspect of the use of the blockchain, NFT that is specifically these little art squares, is an MLM, is a scam? It's too good to be true. You can't have a thing where everyone's getting rich selling nothing and now we're all rich. So who's getting fucked over? It has to be, it's a scam, right? I mean, just literally investing in one of those, because I'm deeply invested in these lion guys smoking the cigars, man. I'll level with you. Was that wise?
So I won't say it's a scam, because I think so. I went to NFT NYC last week, which is the big super hype NFT conference last week in New York, and I saw a lot of disturbing behavior that I think is probably pretty destructive to the individuals in the long term, because their identities are wrapped up in the ownership that they have over some of these projects. But I don't think that you can say that there's no value to them, because a lot of these things like CryptoKitties and CryptoPunks didn't just draw this art or make a very simple video game. They developed the smart contracts, and that's the thing that kind of executes automatic transfers of ownership on the Ethereum blockchain in the beginning, and now that's just exploding. There are a ton of other blockchains. And so without these very simple drawings, the future that we're talking about here would also likely not be possible.
You're saying the fact that NFTs, or a lot of them, are simple JPEGs that don't take up much file space, actually, is this correct? Stop me if I'm incorrect, but it sounds like you're saying that made them ideal as just units to shift around a billion times to build out and test the blockchain and refine its underlying functions.
In
Is
a
that
lot of
accurate?
ways. In a lot of ways, yeah. Yeah. And
So,
not
but
only
what I'm
that.
saying is there is such a thing as real world value, and if someone buys a lion JPEG for $1 million and then sells it for $1.2 million, I believe in my heart someone in the chain of transactions got fucked. Like, I just don't believe that that was all good and that value was real and that's all
that
on the up and up.
No, and that is, I did hear someone, a venture capitalist last week, talk about the same thing, that you have
Because
these.
money can't just come from nowhere, you
Right.
guys.
Well, you have this pricing problem, and then you have a value problem. And pricing can do whatever it wants, but the underlying value of something does not just magically go up as price increases, right?
It's
So
Beanie Babies, dude.
it is Beanie Babies in a lot of ways, but Beanie Babies was not building out infrastructure of a new technology as it was
No,
happening.
that's a very interesting component. Yeah.
Yes, and that is something that I think people don't talk about enough, and it makes it very easy to just dismiss this.
Like, if the NFTs are the reason we're building the digital equivalent of mass transit logistics, a
Yeah,
1,000 years from now, the mass transit logistics will super have mattered. That's fascinating.
yeah. So don't just look into it a little bit. It's a
Well,
super fast.
I'm also someone who's all for pure artistic things to be valued. I just think a lot of these are so like CryptoPunks. It's just not good, man.
Well,
I
yeah.
have a friend Tyler Brown who does NFTs, and it's changed his life, and he's getting rich. And I hope he doesn't end up on the ass end of the scam or whatever if it falls apart. But his art's good. Like, his are
Right,
actually
right.
cool and good. But some of them, I'm like,
So they're different.
it's they're like the equivalent of those jeans we used to have where the Looney Tunes would be in like baggy clothes smoking a joint if they sold for $8,000, and you're like,
No, I
why?
know, I know,
That's all.
but there's another component to it too, which is a little bit less tangible, and that's that, kind of going back to, I think a lot of this stuff is like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the NFT communities that we're talking about. So NFT art is another thing, like fine art, like one-off productions, like Tyler does, are
Mm-hmm.
impressive and actual. You could call them art that
That's
way.
what I mean. He's a real
But
artist. Yeah.
but so these collectibles that they're called also build communities around them, and those communities raise money, and they have a club, and they have real world action that's tied to them as well. And a lot of the NFT projects also have roadmaps of product development, right? So instead of people going out to venture capitalists and asking for a bunch of money, you're actually democratizing capital in a way that didn't exist before, because it's a new form of crowdfunding that's all blockchain based. So there are a lot of other effects happening. The technology one is the one that I am most interested. I think is most impressive to talk about, because no one in the general public is actually hearing about that side of it. That these aren't just pictures of apes; they're actual, R&D developments for something totally new.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so I mean that's going to be a central feature of the NFTs and the blockchain of the coming episodes. And I just want to say, like, this is already a thing that exists in the real world. NFTs are used by luxury brands to determine provenance. Like, I think, is it Gucci or Louis Vuitton? Like, they're already embedding QR codes tied to um, the blockchain in order to prove items are real. So this doesn't just have metaverse effects. Like, these are already real world technologies that are being used.
God forbid you don't get a real ugly ass Louis Vuitton bag with the fucking same pattern that every single thing they sell has on it. You
Didn't we
corporatized piece of shit. I hate this. I hate that it starts with Louis Vuitton and Dolce & Gabbana and Gucci doing it, dude.
Oh, even worse. You want to hear even worse one? So Dolce & Gabbana sold a $1 million, it's called a digiphysical NFT. And it's a suit. So it's a suit that your avatar can wear in the metaverse. And then you can also
really
go to
suit?
you can like go to Milan and they'll make the suit for you, custom made.
Okay, I like this. I turned around really fast. Well, a nice suit, my friend. What did you say? 1 million?
What they bought it for 1 million. It was actually bought by a company called Boson Protocol, which is trying to make this digiphysical commerce protocol
a reality, right?
Yeah. But dope suit. I'll send you a picture of it. It's pretty cool.
The suit we'll all be wearing in the metaverse.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all I had prepared for this first episode.
Great.
Just to give a taste of it, and I've already kind of like done the punchline of how I feel about this whole thing. But we're gonna talk about the platforms that exist right now, and then kind of what these newfangled platforms might look like in the future, and then the possibilities.
And I'm along to not know what he's talking about so that I can ask the questions you're too embarrassed to because they seem so remedial. And in that fashion, everything will get explained to us and the show will be a huge success. This is a little mini-series, so we're not going as long as... Man, lately... Frankly, you know what? Write in if you appreciate a nice breezy 50-minute episode, because lately every show's been going 90 minutes, and I like a variety. So
that's good. You told me 45.
This show will be a little shorter. Yeah, intentionally so. I feel like this show should be a little tasty treat.
Yeah, it could get pretty tedious. So let's.
It could do with a set way to like end it. This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you!